Hey Sagittarius, and welcome to your monthly reading, your monthly tarot reading for June 2023. This is for Sag, rising, or sun signs. Feeling this card here. So I'm re-recording this this is being recorded on June 2nd. I didn't realize that the audio on the first version was totally messed up. So I'm just rushing to get this out to you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and use the same decks actually. So in case you missed it, if you didn't see the intro in the other video, I am doing a separate video for the astrology for the first half of June. So that should be out later today or this evening. I was traveling at the end of last month and kind of underestimated the amount of time I needed to get everything out. So I will have that out to you later on today as well. And then tomorrow morning-ish or tomorrow daytime, we should have those readings for the full moon to the new moon. All right, so we're going to take a look at the progression of the month. We'll be looking at the beginning, middle, and end of the month for you. So I'm feeling like it's this one right here. It just keeps capturing my attention. And there we go. All right, so we'll be taking a look at the beginning, middle, end of the month, and then also what kinds of challenges or a challenge, like what prominent challenge feels like it might be coming up for you this month, and then also what spiritual advice we have for you, Sag, and then we can get started, get this out to you. So glad that somebody commented and mentioned that the audio was totally messed up. Okay, and I'm feeling like I want another card on that. Okay, maybe two cards. Cool. Actually, I believe this one came out before for Sag, so I feel good about that. All right, Sag, so let's get these arranged here so we can take a look at them. Make sure they're all in frame. All right, so to focus these readings, we're going to stick with the astrological deck that I've been using because it is a collective reading, and obviously it's not going to hit for every single Sag, rising, or sun sign every single month because it's not a personal one-to-one reading. To try and focus this in a little bit more to know like what theme or what area we can direct this entire reading towards, we're going to take a look at this, the cards from this particular deck. So what we have showing up here is the 10th house. This has been showing up for a bunch of people for this month. So it looks like the 10th house is what's on deck. So the 10th house is definitely about your more public roles, your maybe even reputation, but definitely has to do with like your career, your purpose, your path, like what you're doing in this world, right? And so and if it's not like some greater calling, it doesn't have to be something like that. You don't have to be like an entrepreneur or anything like that. This could really just be pointing to something around your work, your career that you do, and you know, the day in and day out of that. So I don't want it to feel like, sometimes I think when I talk about the 10th house, people think it has to be like this big lofty collective goal, or like they have to be some like Gary Vaynerchuk style person, and that's not what I'm talking about, right? This is more just like, what are you reaching towards? Like, what are you trying to move towards achieving in this world in terms of like your work or your purpose? And how do you show up in a very public role? Because the 10th house is at the top of the chart, right? This is kind of like, you can think about it like high noon, like midday, right? So this is where we're seen very well. We're seen very publicly by other people. So however that applies for you. And I'm just gonna adjust this because you guys know me. I want this to be straight on. So we have the beginning of the month, we've got the Death card. In the middle of the month, we have the Four of Wands, and then we round out the end of the month with the Eight of Pentacles. So challenge coming up is the Fool card. And then for your spiritual advice, it's interesting. We have like, for a progression, we've got the Six of Cups, the Five of Cups, and the High Priestess, right? So, and like I said, I believe the High Priestess was one of the cards that came up for Sagittarius before in the first reading that I did for June. So this should be interesting. So apparently last message wasn't all of the information that we needed. So that's how I'm going to take it. We just needed to re-record this so that we had something that felt like more collectively was there for the Sag risings and sun signs. So start out the month with the first part of the month, we have the Death card, right? And this is just kind of like really, you know what I'm thinking of? Like the image that I have with the sickle is just like whacking away the things that no longer serve us, like in a field. And it's just kind of like clearing away, right? Like what is it that is no longer necessary for us to be focused on? What's staying and what's going, you know? Like you're moving forward in your 10th house. And it's like, as you move forward, what's necessary for you to have on board and what just is like maybe slowing you down, pulling your energy. And that can be you know, projects, it can be ideals or beliefs that you have, personal beliefs that you have. This can also be like people who are slowing you down or certain kinds of activities or habits that are slowing you down, you know, like there are certain things in your routine, maybe even that could be just not serving what you want to do overall, right? So the Death card kind of points to what needs to be done with, like let it be buried, clear out the path, make some room, because especially if you're expanding into your 10th house, we need to like make some room for everything else to come in. And I know that that's totally an overused kind of cliche type thing, but there's a reason for why it's said so much, is because there's an amount of truth to that. So that's what we have at the beginning of the month, is needing to evaluate that, right? And I would evaluate your connections with people, the projects that you're investing your time, energy, and attention into, how you're spending your time, like all of these kinds of things. It's like, if you're really trying to get to the top, to climb that mountain, to reach the pinnacle, then like, what is it that you're taking with you along the way, right? What's worth putting in your pack and carrying like up that mountain, essentially, you know, what's too heavy and needs to be put down. So then we move into the middle of the month and we have the Four of Wands. So Four of Wands is definitely going through like this kind of rite of passage. Unless any of you are involved specifically with, for instance, maybe like property acquisition, something like that, then I would say, hey, this might be having to do with that, because sometimes this can actually be about property acquisition, although it's not as common. However, this is more like a rite of passage. It's a point of celebration. Like you can see, it's a really jubilant card. It's definitely has to do with trusting the process. You know, there's a quote that I've carried with me that is my friend Alexander Gibson. Her father wrote this like small book of quotes, and one of the things that always stayed with me that was in that book was relaxation is a function of trusting. Right. And there's something that is not really shown very well in like this particular depiction of the card, but normally what you see is the castle walls in the background, and they're outside of the castle walls. And there's a certain level of like, if you think about the time period within like where this was actually created, to be outside of those walls is to be very trusting about the situation being safe and secure, and also just being in a state of celebration and appreciation, you know. So I think that in the middle of the month, there is this point that you've reached where, you know, maybe just look at the accomplishments that you've made and like where you've crossed certain thresholds. Sometimes if we don't stop to acknowledge where we've come from and like where we've gotten to, we don't even realize that we've kind of, you know, gone through a rite of passage, that we've moved into the next level or the next step. So, you know, it could be something to do with that, or it could literally be moving into a new position. So for some of you who are in like a work environment where like promotion is involved, I would say this would be something to do with that, right? Because rite of passage or like a promotion or going into a next level, a next step, right? Like obviously this couple is moving from being, you know, just together into being married, right? That's a rite of passage. Having children is a rite of passage. Moving from a role where you weren't in a leadership position to being in more of a leadership position and taking on responsibilities, that's a rite of passage, right? So there's something to do with that in the middle of the month. And I think that this beginning of the month, if you really take and pay attention to the message that with the Death card, I think it helps to clear the path and clear the way so that you can really step into this and really appreciate that. And then we round out the month with the Eight of Pentacles, you know, and Pentacles, right? That's the Earth suit. So, definitely can have to do with money, especially because we're talking about the 10th house, so definitely can have to do with money and like how your skill level, how your studies, how like what it is that you do to sharpen your saw in your given area of expertise, how that is maybe even connected to the stability and financial, even maybe stability or success of your endeavors, like whether that be business or working within a company or whatever it is, right? So, and the Eight of Pentacles reminds us like, hey, there's more to be done. There's more sharpening of the saw, more skill building, more that needs to be like worked on with regard to like our skills with whatever it is that's connected to your career, right? So you can always improve, you can always be better, you can always be, learning more, learning how to do it differently, better, more updated methods, incorporating maybe more upgraded communication tools or leadership tools or whatever it is that is applicable to what you're doing. If you're in a certain level of like study or whatever it is, it might be related to that. Like for instance, I've been studying astrology now for over a year and a half with a teacher, and I'm continuing to still study, and I'm just putting out information about that. Definitely I'm studying still every day. And I've talked to astrologers who've been doing it for like, more than 10 years, who's like, they're just like, it never ends. Your studies just never end. So, so there is like that component, right? Like even with tarot, I've been doing tarot for a long time. I can always be sharpening my saw. Like I actually do continue to like study, maybe not every day the way that I am with astrology right now, but yeah, I still come back and study. So wherever you're given like expertises or your skill level with regard to like what you're doing with the 10th house, it's just like, hey, it's time to like make sure that you're paying attention to that. I think this is what's going to be on deck for you at the end of the month. So then we have like what the challenge card is, and the challenge card is the Fool card, right? Fool card, I normally love the Fool card. I think it's such a great card. However, of course, in the challenge position, it's like, maybe when it comes to the opportunities that you are taking, maybe when it comes to the expansion or what you're doing with regard to your business or your career path, you want to make sure that you're not just going in naive, and that you're not going in with this kind of like, the Fool, when it is in a challenge or reverse position, is usually just like super naive, super like looking around, not observant about the world, and just makes a whole bunch of like mistakes. It's like about to trip over everything because of not paying attention to the details, right? So you don't want to be in this state of naivete where you are oblivious to what's going on around you. You want to make sure that you're being present to the process. Like there's something to be said for, yes, having optimism, yes, like being excited about the adventure that's ahead, and having that optimistic view. And also we need to be present and pay attention and not be gullible and not be like a pushover, and not allow ourselves to go into a state of just like obliviousness, right? Is that a word, obliviousness? It is now. So then we come into what your spiritual advice is, right? It's interesting because I feel like there's somebody from your past that's going to somehow be of an influence here. So either, and this could be a past, like a friend, like an old friend. It could be, who knows, an old lover. It could also be, someone from like a past work experience or whatever it is. But I feel like there's somebody who's coming in to kind of remind you about certain things, maybe even remind you about like the joy of what it's like to be like, why are you doing this in the first place? Like what had you want to be on this path and do what you're doing with regard to your career in the first place, right? So like, yeah, maybe taking a look at or being reminded of the joy of doing what you do and why you do it. And, just thinking about when you were a kid. Like the thing about this nostalgic type of vibe in this card is like when you were a kid and we did things because we just felt like doing them, because it was fun, because it seemed like a good idea, because we wanted to, because the process was like an enjoyable process. Like if you, I don't know, if you liked making things out of Play-Doh, like part of that the process before you got to the end goal, right? The end product wasn't, it wasn't like you were just upset about that whole process to get there, right? You enjoyed like digging your hands into the Play-Doh and molding things. Like that was a part of what was enjoyable about it. So ask yourself, in the reaching of your goals, in the moving towards, this ultimate place that you want to get to with your career, and with your like public roles, whatever that looks like, are you enjoying the process along the way? Have you forgotten what it is that you love about this? Have you forgotten what makes you excited about that? Maybe share more of that, maybe expand on that, remember what that's like. So I love this for some spiritual advice. I also really love that you're getting the 5 of Cups here. And I know that this doesn't exactly look like, the most fun card in the universe. But it's meant to point out that, like there are still 2 cups here that are full, while the others have spilled, right? And I call it the crying over spilled milk card for a reason. It's like, yeah, you made some mistakes along the way. Yeah, maybe things aren't picking up at the speed that you would like. Maybe for your age bracket, maybe you're not at a certain place that you really wanted to be in your career or whatever it is. And so therefore you feel like maybe some regret or some embarrassment or some shame around that or whatever it is. But, you can't focus on the regrets or the mistakes or what hasn't gone well, right? This is like what you need to be focused on is what is working, what is going well, what do you have to look forward to, what can you look towards, right? Make your way back to the kingdom across that bridge and remember that there are things that are still here that are worthy of your attention and appreciation, right? And then lastly, and I really love this card as well. Actually, this is probably one of my favorite cards in this particular deck. I really love their depiction of the High Priestess here. I was like, this is just so badass. But, and also I'm into like anime and fantasy and stuff. So it's like, it totally speaks my language. But the High Priestess is, really about being in a place of like, she wields both the shadow and the light in life. Right? There's a reason that she's the High Priestess, is like she works with all of the energies and doesn't distinguish like between things in terms of like good or bad necessarily, but more just like, this is the energy that is, and I'm going to work with this to create what it is I want to create, right? A priestess creates magic, right? She holds sacred rites, she creates spells, but she is a wielder of the magic in the world, much like the magician. But in order to do that, in order to be in this place where she wields this kind of energy, and to hold all of that energy, there's a level of intuitive, grounded presence and strength that she needs to have with this energy, right? And so how does she get to that place? Well, it takes time to like be with ourselves. You need to be able to be in a space of like solace and meditation and, journaling or like whatever it is that you can do to get into a state of spaciousness to be able to hear your own internal wisdom, right? So she's very intuitive. The High Priestess is extremely intuitive, and she goes on instinct and gut and intuition because she can trust it so strongly. And not only because she's, honed her skills and tested this over a period of time, but also because she, and, of course, like just like anything, practice, right? But spending that time with herself, being able to be in a state of like not having distractions, right? Like shut off the computer, shut off your, like not shut off your phone, but like, put your phone down. You don't have to be listening to something all the time. Like if you're in a state of doing, because maybe you're creating all these things, you need to make sure that you're aware and conscious of creating some spaciousness in your experience and your schedule so that you can slow down and just hear your own thoughts, right? If you can't hear your thoughts, if you can't feel your feelings, even if those, I think often the reasons that we don't do that is not just because we're busy, but because when we slow down, we feel the intensity and the immense feelings that maybe we've been holding at bay through our busyness. And that can feel uncomfortable. But I promise you, when you pop over to the other side, when you feel your way through those things, it's not so intense. Really, they just need to be acknowledged and have a space to be felt, right? But then when we get through and we get to that clear space, we can hear our thoughts, feel our feelings, and we move into a place of intuitive wisdom, and we can really move from our gut. We can really move from our intuition. We can really move forward in a very powerful and grounded and a way of knowing. Like, that's the thing about the High Priestess too. There's a sense of knowing that she has. You know, she just knows what is the right move for her to make in these particular situations. She knows what needs to be done because she can hear, like, she's in alignment with her internal wisdom through being able to be present to the silence, to her voice, to her feelings, to all of it, right? I know I went on about that for a little bit. You guys know I'm a little bit long-winded. Sometimes it takes me a minute to get there. You know, I blame my Mercury placements. So that's what we have for you this month, Sagittarius. I hope that this has felt helpful and insightful. I really hope that the audio worked this time. So please, if this video seemed to give you any kind of insight or message or anything like that, please consider giving it a like. It does help the channel as I'm continuing to grow and build things and put more stuff out there, and it lets me know also like what works and what doesn't work. But and if you want to see more videos like this, and I'm starting to put out more astrology stuff, I'm kind of playing with what I want to do with the astrology videos, so that may change. But just yeah, if you want to stay up on when these things come out, hit the notification bell, subscribe if you haven't already, and for those of you who have, thank you so much. And always thank you for your time and for being here. I will see you in the next video. Bye.